Hi everybody and welcome to Vassals of Kingsgrave, which is an offshoot of the award-winning podcast of Ice and Fire, the longest-running podcast dedicated to the works of George R.R. Martin. And today we are continuing our hopefully soon-to-become epic reread of A Song of Ice and Fire in linear format, and I'm ashamed to say that I still haven't discovered the name of the Redditor who came up with the linear format, but I'll put a link in the post as always. Today I am joined by a fellowship of vassals, which is just making my heart warm with glee. My name is Bina 007, and in no particular order other than where people appear on my Skype screen, we welcome middlecyclone.
Hey, this is Amanda, or middlecyclone on the forums.
We welcome Varley.
Hey, this is Matt, Varley on the forums.
We welcome #Greg.
Hello, this is Greg, claudiusthefool on the forums.
Podcast Gatecrasher Mordion.
Hi, this is Michael and Mordion on the forums.
The ever forbidding FTWard.
Hi, this is Thomas, or FTWard on the boards.
It's just
You're forbidding, Thomas.
Foreboding, forbidding, I don't know. We're going to get into a heavy discussion about Sawema Royce, I feel. And last but certainly not least, White Raven.
Heyo, White Raven, Brett in real life.
The man who stole the thunder of the last podcast with his Lunar Dragon theory. And we will hopefully be joined later by Nadia, aka Nadia. Maybe because as Greg, FTWard, and Mordion went on the podcast last week, just to ask, have you guys done rereads before? And if so, have you done them in just a straightforward format, or have you messed it up? I mean, I think FTWard, you were saying that this isn't technically really a reread because we're not doing it in the order sanctioned and sanctified by the author, and I felt very chastened, so I'm just like bowing my head a little bit into my chest at this point.
I apologize. I just don't think it's a proper reread. I think it's perfectly fine. I'm not criticizing
for dilettantes or whatever, but not for.
I thumb at you, sir. It is a proper reread.
I just think the books are constructed pretty specifically to be read as they're written.
I think the first ones are.
I disagree. I think the last two even more.
Man, I don't
really
think so.
Yeah.
Really?
Oh,
So you
wow.
don't like the Feast Dance reread?
I don't dislike it. I don't hate it, I guess. I don't think it's correct. But I mean, if it's what you enjoy, I have no issue with it. I just don't think it's correct.
I guess my issue with the Feast for Crows and Dance for Dragons the way they are is how many people they lose in Feast for Crows. Like, I've had people who have read the first three and then they get to the fourth one and it just takes all the wind out of their sails.
Well, I don't need them then.
Fair enough. We all made it.
That's hilarious. So presumably then, FTWard, you're not the sort of person who'll do character-driven rereads where you just do all of Sansa or all of Jaime or whatever.
No, I think he puts information, pretty specifically in specific places, so that very often you'll get like the answer to a question like 10 chapters before you'll even get the question, kind of thing. So I think to just read certain chapters out of order is not ideal. It's not the optimum way to do it, in my opinion. Again,
No one's forcing you to join us, Thomas.
Yeah, I can go.
Please don't.
No,
But that's just the way I feel. I mean, I think for a reread you can do whatever you want, but I just don't feel it's the optimum way to do it.
The good news is I think today's 4 chapters for April 298 are in the right order as in the book, so...
Right, exactly.
The only reason why he showed up.
Exactly.
Yeah,
It's not uncoincidental. You probably went and checked, and then like, okay, fine. So have you done a technical proper reread, or do you do them often? I don't know.
I used to do them every year, once a year, but I have not done a proper reread in maybe 2 or 3 years, I don't think, since the last time I read Dance. So I guess I was kind of naively saying once Winds is announced, I'll do a proper reread. Up to that, so I guess I've been stalled out since the last time I read Dance, which was maybe 2 or 3 years ago.
That's the way I normally do my rereads with other series, and so the fact that there hasn't been a book for a while has sort of stalled me a little bit. But I've probably reread them, I don't know, 4 or 5 times, something like that. Not a ton, but
Same
Okay.
with
Yeah, you guys are the lore masters because I rarely reread anything. I mean, aside from like Lord of the Rings and some of my favorite books, but I listened to them all on audio.
Exactly. Wait, what?
Wait, what?
What?
Some of your favorite books, and these don't make the cut, huh?
I was about to say, including these.
Oh, okay.
But I've come to these very late in my reading life. I've only, I started these in 2010, so I haven't been reading them for 15 years. But
Yeah.
I listened to them all on audiobook first, then I read all the books, and now I've kind of always, every now and then I'll just listen to an audiobook while I'm doing something. So I've not reread them all in order since I originally read them, but I've technically read them 2.5 times, I guess, by now.
I'm sorry, Greg.
It's all right.
Well,
I liked your theory, by the way, Brett. You kept qualifying it the whole time, like, this is crazy, this is crazy. Like, this makes more sense than most theories out there. And I actually thought it was, and you actually did your research, so I give you kudos for that.
I think everyone on the forums is kind of like, yeah, this makes a lot more sense than I think Brett kind of gave himself credit for.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
And
found that essay that I think FTWard linked to later that was on like Westeros or one of those blogs. It was almost overwhelming by how long it was. Though I mean,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, and let's
I still
face it,
haven't read through it.
what Brett's had in sort of amateurism, he made up for it in being concise. I mean,
Yeah.
you got basically all the major points, and then just but it didn't take all day.
I didn't read through their whole theory. Did they have dragons coming from the moon?
No.
I didn't
he has,
think so.
Not that part. Yeah.
not literal dragons, but like a meteor
Yeah, the
shower.
explosion making it look like dragons. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, so in response to last week's podcast, I guess one of the key bones of contention was the characterization of Sir Waymar Royce and whether he was or wasn't qualified to lead the raiding party or the ranging party even. And I think some really good points were made by people that this is a guy who's been trained all his life, he's been fostered out, and it wasn't like a major ranging, it was just a sort of little test one, and that he acted with some valor. So I don't know if any of you guys, Greg, Mordion, FTWard, want to say anything on that topic, because I mean I guess we were probably a bit harsh on him.
No, I didn't partake in the debate really, but I mean I never felt that he was a wuss or anything. Like, I thought he has one of the most badass lines in the books, and yeah, like while I'm reading it, I was like, yes, they should have just gone back to the watch, but he did force them to keep going. But as you guys said, I don't remember if it was in the comments or in the actual episode, like, no, his job is to keep them out there to find out what's going wrong. He wasn't like making an idiot decision just seeking glory. I think so, and I'm pro Team Waymar Royce, so I'm nothing but positive for him.
Yeah, I think he's pretty great. Obviously, I'm pretty pro Waymar Royce. I think it's notable that a couple of the people on the forums that have actually served in the military have come out in favor of his kind of junior officer kind of decisions that he made. And I think George sets him up on the surface to be kind of a character we're not supposed to be sympathetic or like towards, but I think if you just right below the surface, he pretty much does everything correctly, and he's just pretty much screwed by magic, and there's nothing really that he did wrong at all.
Yeah, and like we did say last week that he does die a very valiant death. He behaves with such honor in his death that even though George writes him as being a little bit disdainful of the others, that you can't fault him for that. So
yeah, he would be of an age with the Wild Hares, probably that group of knights that got into Rob. So it's kind of like you have to think it's like this guy's very young, and he's also just a product of his society to some extent, which doesn't make him good, but it's like he's not the worst young noble that we meet by far.
Of all the Night's Watch lordlings and or noblemen that we meet, I think he's in my top 10 at least, maybe 5.
Yeah.
But, he didn't go there for anything wrong that he did. He was like just a later son of the family. So.
Well, in fairness, we don't know. I mean,
I just assumed that until I heard otherwise.
Well, he's the third son. I think his leadership is excellent. I think he's kind of like Socratic in the way he just continually asks those other two guys, the Rangers, questions to kind of both get information for himself and to kind of enlighten those two guys, Garrett and Will. I don't think he does anything wrong. He's a little confrontational with Garrett, but it's clear that Garrett and Will have been kind of talking behind his back and kind of mocking him. And I think he's probably aware of that because they did that publicly. So I think he's not going to come home a failure. And he knows if he comes home too quick, that Garrett and Will are going to, no matter what they said, they're the ones that want to come home quick, but they're going to say behind his back that he's craven and stuff. So he's kind of in an almost impossible situation when he ends up against the others. I mean...
Yeah, I think you're right on further reflection.
Yeah.
It's just a weird one. I don't know whether it's like just watching Game of Thrones and how he's depicted there, and I hate when TV shows like infect how I read books. Like going back and this is why you need to read books, right? Because going back and reading it, it's just like it's totally different to what I remembered. But it just was so different, and on film.
Well, they reshot that, right? They shot the pilot, and then they reshot certain scenes.
Oh, did they reshoot that one though? Did they reshoot?
Yeah, they recast Waymar Royce because the character they originally cast was he was Arthur in that short run Camelot series. Was that?
Oh yeah.
So they recast him. So I'd love if they ever do a special features where they show the original way they shot the prologue. I'd love to see that.
Oh, Jamie Campbell-Bower. Okay.
Yeah.
Why would they need to recast it if they recorded it already?
Well, because I think he had gone on to, like, he was going to be in a big role in a kind of a competing series, I think.
So you killed him off. It's
Yeah,
like you need him to come back.
And I think he's much closer to what I imagine Waymar Royce to look like, because he's very thin, very gaunt.
He's got great bone structure. They should cast him for something else in Game of Thrones now. He's got a good fantasy fiction
Or a good
face.
show, one or the other.
Yeah, either way.
In the show, he didn't say the line though, right? He didn't say "dance with me," then, correct? That was.
I don't believe so in the way that we've seen it. No, I don't believe so.
I mean, I also haven't watched the show in a while, but I suspect that his death in the show wasn't as valiant. It was more just him looking cowardly and out of his depth and getting cut down, I think.
I don't even think we see it.
They couldn't show the others too much in that first season because they weren't fully developed yet either. They were just those little blue ice monsters.
Any other comments on or issues thrown up by last week's episode? I'm trying to remember now. I think that was the main one, wasn't it? And then kind of Lunar Dragon stuff. So FTWard, you linked to loads of stuff online. So it feels like the concept of like the Westeros being sort of tilted off its axis when a second moon disappears is quite. People have talked about that before.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's right there in the Handmaidens kind of layout, that kind of mythology, and then it's just kind of piecing together how much of that was real, of the second moon giving forth the dragons and going too close to the sun and all that stuff. I also just linked in the show notes today, I put a Westeros thread from like 2008, which I think is it's got to be the basis of whatever you have off Reddit, because it's got the exact same dates and stuff down to like April 22nd and like stuff that precise.
Amazing precision, yeah.
So I think
I'm sure
that was
April is spelled APRYL.
Oh, it's just date and month. Yeah.
Well, everyone who's read that Chaucer knows APRILLE, but you know, whatever.
Well, we learned the calendar in Princess
calendar.
and the Queen. And it's terrible. It's so boring. It's just like the fourth moon turn of the 297th year or whatever. There's no flavor to it at all. Unfortunately.
You could have at least given us like a Valyrian calendar
Yeah,
or something. That they don't use in Westeros. That like just to have. I understand why he didn't want to make that up, because it's just more stuff that people can nitpick about. But it's good to have those things. It adds to texture, I think.
Sounds like he wants to distance himself from time as much as he can.
Yeah.
Yeah. And part of that might be too, if you think in our own world, most like major calendars have been created, like, or enforced. And I know, Greg, you'll know more about this because you know more Roman history than me. Like, usually like issued through the church or through large empires. And there hasn't been like a multi-continent branching empire that could have necessarily done that.
Yet everyone speaks the same language for some reason.
Yeah, my favorite part of that is when Julius Caesar took over Rome. Like, he basically had the same day, 10 days in a row, just to get the calendars to make up, because during the Civil Wars, no one really kept track of time too much. So that's one. Yeah. Good old Julian calendar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, wasn't it like something like April 12th or something? Lasted for like a week and a half.
Matt,
like
speak
that,
up, man. Speak up.
Or the Ides. The
I
Ides.
have a question.
Nadia,
I
welcome
don't
to
know
the
if
Hello,
this is. Yeah, I've been here for a while now.
Oh no.
Uh, I was just gonna ask, is this like a lunar calendar or a solar calendar? The
It's
one
got
they
to be a
use in
lunar.
Westeros.
It's got to be like a 12 moon turn lunar calendar, and I think a moon turn would be like 30 days or 29 and a half days.
Oh,
I
I
think
know all
that's-
about lunar calendars.
Yeah,
That's
I mean
okay.
that's just the way it's got to work with pregnancies and stuff like that, and menstruation and all that stuff. So
Oh, good. We hit that part of the combo.
It would be, but then a lunar calendar would be moving around the seasons anyway.
yeah, but the seasons are not tied to like the months. Sorry, that's boring.
No, that's okay.
Everybody knows when their name day is, though.
Yeah, we live for geeky stuff. Okay, so on to the chapter recaps. So today we are covering the events of April 298, which thank goodness are broadly, I think, in the order that they are in the book. So we're doing chapters Ned 1, Jon 1, Cat 2, and Arya 1. And I think we're kicking off with White Raven.
Okay, Eddard I. So 300 people pour through the gates of Winterfell, but the royal wheelhouse has to stay behind with its 40 heavy draft horses because it's too wide to even fit through the gates. That's what you get when you let the woman pack, I suppose. So amongst the 300 were the fan favorites like pretty-haired Jaime Lannister, ugly burn-faced Sandor Clegane, tall Prince Joffrey, and short Impy Tyrion. And Ned is happily greeted by his old pal Bob with a hug and a laugh. But all shallow-ass Ned can think about is how much more dreamy he used to be. He's put on 8 stone, which is 112 pounds or 50.8 kilograms for you non-Americans.
I had to look that up. I didn't know what a stone was.
It's a lot of weight to add. 112 pounds. It's a big.
In 9 years, yeah, it's a lot.
So he put on 8 stone, an extra chin, and some perfume from the sounds of it. Ned remembers 9 years ago when they put down the Greyjoy Rebellion and he took Theon as a hostage / ward. And we get a little snippet of Robert's armor. Any comments on the armor, Nadia? It just seems like standard armor to me. What do you think?
I hope he had a breastplate.
Yeah.
Striker.
I always have an issue with the helmets.
Yeah.
Yes,
no point in having a
it's not
helmet with
armor
antlers
generally.
on. Yeah.
You don't think that'd be a good thing?
In the middle of a battle, no.
Yeah, but just
As a
get
decorative
caught on
helmet,
stuff.
it's fine.
Yeah, I know. All right, so everyone.
It's just adding to the weight you're carrying.
Yeah,
He's such a badass, though. It doesn't matter.
I kind of picture him like the king not really getting involved in the fighting so much, but it's Robert, so he probably would. So it's weird, because you'd think it'd just be like, oh, I wear this for just special occasions, but if he's wearing it in the middle of a battle, it doesn't make much sense. But, he wore it, and he won. So everyone is introduced, and Robert asks to pay his respects, and Eddard is touched, and the queen is unimpressed, but he goes off and does it anyway. So they go to the crypts of Winterfell, where George gives us a info dump about the north being as large as the other 6 kingdoms combined. It's very sparsely populated. Kings don't visit there. It snows even in the summer, and winters are hard. Robert loves to eat and drink, and he's a lecherous old man. The Lords of Winterfell.
Of 36.
That's old, man. That's old. The Lords of Winterfell are all buried in the crypts with a stone likeness and a long sword to keep their spirits at bay. We get there were kings in the north before they took over. We get the deaths of Ned's brother, father, and sister. And a mention of Howland Reed, Robert's promise to kill Rhaegar, Robert fulfilling that promise, and the fact that Robert doesn't like his wife. And we get Jon Arryn's death, Lysa being crazy and going to the Eyrie, Tywin agreeing to foster Robb, Ned not liking Tywin at all. Then we get Robert offering Ned the hand to the king and telling him he's the only one he trusts. We get the description of what it means to be a hand. And the king offers to join Sansa and Joffrey in marriage, but Ned says you'll have to ask his wife. I wanted to read the passage about Ned's sister dying because I like it. Bina, do you have it in front of you? You have a much better reading voice than I do.
I was with her when she died, Ned reminded the king. She wanted to come home to rest beside Brandon and father. He could hear her still at times. Promise me, she had cried, in a room that smelled of blood and roses. Promise me, Ned. The fever had taken her strength, and her voice had been faint as a whisper, but when he gave her his word, the fear had gone out of his sister's eyes. Ned remembered the way she had smiled then, how tightly her fingers had clutched his as she gave up her hold on life, the rose petals spilling from her palm, dead and black. After that he remembered nothing. They had found him still holding her body, silent with grief. The little Crannogman, Howland Reed, had taken her hand from his. Ned could recall none of it. I bring her flowers when I can, he said. Lyanna was fond of flowers. There you go.
Boom.
Excellent.
Boom.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I like that passage.
So, did the Mad King send back Brandon and his father's bones after he roasted them?
They probably just took them when they took the capital, I would think, but...
They have them, like, marked off.
Yeah.
Brandon's bones, here they are in this box.
I would expect he probably displayed them, yeah.
That's possible.
Can I ask another
yeah.
question from really early on? Like, I think in the second paragraph it says, the tall boy beside him could only be the crown prince, and that stunted little man was surely the imp. Has Ned never met Tyrion before?
It's possible.
Yeah.
He
Seems
wouldn't
like
have been in King's Landing
Yeah.
when they took over.
Seems he's mostly a
the kid.
Casterly Rock.
And Tyrion isn't that old, really. So he probably wouldn't have been brought to King's
How old is
Landing.
Tyrion exactly?
Like 27 or something? Is he younger than that? Or?
I think he's like 9 years younger than Jaime and Cersei, right?
Okay, so they're like 32, so he's probably like 24.
So if he's 24 and the rebellion was 14, 15 years ago, I mean, he would have been really young, so he definitely wouldn't have been around.
Okay, so that makes sense then.
I think they probably would have met at the tournament at Lannisport after the Greyjoy Rebellion, right?
Was Ned there?
Unless he was hidden away.
That's true.
Out of shame.
Yeah.
It also could just be that George is just trying to introduce us to the characters.
That's what it felt like to me.
I suspect that's probably an important point.
But I was surprised at how much we hear in, like, this first chapter from Ned. I mean, we hear about how Brandon and Rickard died, and that Lyanna and Rhaegar, and we hear so much about Robert's Rebellion, and we hear about Howland Reed. I didn't think all of this was introduced so early. It's been a while since I've reread this.
I didn't either when I picked the chapter, because I would have probably picked a different one. Because I was like, well, I should just write this word for word and just read it off.
Catelyn II is the same. Don't
But
feel
it's
bad.
amazing how elegant it is. And again, these aren't long chapters, and yet so much is in there.
And he just flows through it so perfectly.
He's not going to ask you to recall this, but he's just going to give you that foundation that he's going to keep layering on, and then before you know it, you'll know stuff and you won't even know how you know it.
He's such a dreamy writer.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
even
it never
right
feels
here-
like you're being dumped on. It's always
Yeah.
shouldn't have said dumped on.
Nice.
Info dumped on.
Yes. In this chapter, George leaves a Cleveland steamer of an info dump on us.
What's a Cleveland steamer?
It may be because I'm reading Philippa Gregory's The Taming of the Queen at the moment, but the bit where it says Robert Baratheon had always been a man of huge appetites just really reminds me of late period Henry VIII. Big time. And then earlier when she describes Brandon and Cat, it actually reminded me a little bit of like Brandon being Prince Arthur and Cat as Catherine of Aragon, who then has to marry Henry VIII. It's all sorts of weird little echoes. Probably because I'm just in Tudor.
But it wasn't a bit... I was thinking of the same thing. And then basically Henry VIII set aside Catherine of Aragon on the basis that she'd been married to his brother first. And how can you take your brother's wife? And then here it says that Ned did his duty. It was his duty to marry his brother's betrothed.
Yeah, I had that underlined too. It's like, as custom decreed. It's like, do we get that anywhere else?
Yeah, so there's... I don't think so.
I feel like somewhere else, but I can't remember.
Maybe it's a custom only Ned is ever.
But it was interesting.
It's a northern custom.
But maybe it speaks to that whole, that whole Robb Stark sort of being honor bound to do things. Like maybe it isn't really a custom in the North, but Ned is just that kind of guy who'll always just feel, what's the word? Obliged.
We've got it with Joffrey, and when he dies, his brother steps up, is forced to step up and marry Marjorie.
Oh, that's true.
It's true.
Yeah.
Also, I think Ned really needed the men, and Hoster made it very clear that he'd only get them if he married Catelyn II.
I mean, I suppose it makes total sense, doesn't it? Because in those days, marriages were for alliances, so regardless of whether one of the parties dies, if you still need the alliance, you just need to swap the people and the alliance still holds. So.
You're right. Stannis should have stepped
exactly.
up and married Marjorie.
Yeah, what a burden that would have been.
Better than Stanza. Better than Stanza.
Hey, I ship Stanza. Leave off.
I do not.
I think it's going to end with Stanza. I really do. When Robert says, "In my dreams, I kill him every night. 1,000 deaths will still be less than he deserves." Do you think he's just bullshitting? Do you think he's just kind of in the moment and kind of one of those people who is a bit of a subconscious people pleaser, like with Ned in the crypt? He sort of wants to imagine himself as being tremendously romantic and loyal. I mean, he's not seriously, this long later, traumatized by this and still kind of dreaming of vengeance. Is he really?
I think
Well,
he is.
Ned's-
I think
yeah,
there's a lot of
Ned's-
cognitive dissonance there. Like, he doesn't think of all of his affairs and all that stuff because Cersei doesn't matter to him. He doesn't care about her. He at all. Like, really.
Right.
And so it's just like, he always has this, like, great idealized love. I mean, he probably would have cheated on just as much.
I picture him like saying, "She was more beautiful than that." Ned like looking at her out of the corner of his eye thinking, "That's exactly what she looked like."
Well, Ned says from his own POV, Ned had loved her with all his heart. Robert had loved her even more. So Ned certainly believes that Robert loved Lyanna. I mean, whether he's the best judge of that or not, but I don't think it's anything Robert's just making up.
I often wonder if Ned's kind of in that shared not delusion, but that shared thing with Robert, that they have to believe that this was the perfect love. Yeah. Ned has to buy into that, because if not, they've gone to war for nothing. They've caused all this death.
Oh, it was more than just his sister.
Rickard and Brandon.
Yeah, you can say Brandon went just for Lyanna, but once Brandon goes, everything else falls. I mean, it stops being about Lyanna after that, I think.
Oh no, totally. But I'm just saying that as it's like the proximate cause, right? So I think Ned has to believe that it was motivated by love, not something lesser.
Like ambition.
Yeah.
Oh, clearly wasn't ambition. It's not like Robert wanted to be a king. I mean, I'm sure he liked it once he became one, but I don't think that was ever a goal of his when he was born and grew up.
Well, he didn't though, did he? That's the tragedy of Robert. He campaigned hard for something that he ultimately didn't want.
Yeah, he has that line about sitting a throne is 1,000 times harder than winning one. That's pretty, like a paraphrase of what Che Guevara said. It's easier to blow up trains than to make them run on time. It's much, it's harder to keep your to run a government than to bring one down.
And I often feel that with Robert, partly like the way he eats, the way he drinks, the way he hunts, the way he's so reckless. It's kind of like an act of self-sabotage. This is a man who deeply hates what his life has become, and so I don't want to overdo it. It's not like I think he's committing slow suicide with his lifestyle, but I think there's something to the idea that he really has very little care for himself.
Doesn't he actually say, so I can...
drink and whore myself into an early grave?
So he legitimately is trying to kill himself slowly.
Yeah. I think there's a darkness in Robert that Cersei sees, but Ned doesn't see until much later when he's already in King's Landing.
Which is kind of no disrespect to Ned, because Ned just hasn't seen him. He's not been around him, so it is going to take him longer to realize what's happened to his friend, I think.
Was anyone else surprised when you found out that Robert actually thought it was a good idea to foster Robert Arryn with Tywin Lannister?
Is it fishy that Tywin's never taken a ward before?
Well, it was made a point of that.
Yeah.
But I mean, just what we know, even at this point, we know that like Jon and Ned, they don't trust the Lannisters, and just the fact that like why would Ned's good friend want to send his namesake to stay with that nest of vipers and all that?
Well, because he's sickly and weak, and I think Tywin would make a man of him, I guess.
I know. He just doesn't know what's going on.
What do you think would have been?
Because he did such a fine job with his own sons.
Do you think?
1 out of 2. He's batting 500.
I don't think he's batting 0, but.
Do you think he would have? Robert would have made.
I hate Cersei and
Seriously.
Say 333. He's 1 for 3.
Do you think Robert would have made Tywin the Hand if Ned had rejected it?
We said he's going to make Jaime the Hand, right?
Yeah, but I think that was just because he knows Ned hates Jaime.
Yeah, and he said that later, right?
Yeah.
After the incident.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think once the king asks you, it's like the president asks you something, you can't really say no. it's really a formality once you're asked.
Especially a man like Ned, who genuinely believes in honor and obligation and duty.
Well, he was going to turn him down until the note came.
Yeah.
I don't think he actually would have turned him down.
You think even without Cat, he wouldn't have?
Oh, without Cat, sure, but Catelyn's never going to let him.
When he's like down here where you're no use to anyone, and like just a chapter ago he was saying, I might have to go up and fight Mance Rayder. It's like, well, I don't know if he's no use to anyone.
And then the final thing that I asked us was when Robert says that he wants to marry Joff to Sansa, and then Ned says this offer did surprise him. That's just because of her age, right? Because obviously Sansa is a suitable candidate for marriage.
Yeah,
and those times 11 would have been old enough.
She's got to grow up sometime. Winter's coming.
Because he thinks of Sansa as a child.
That's also as his father. You have much more sentimentality about your daughter, an 11-year-old daughter, than someone you just know. So, and plus he came on the heels of him asking him to be Hand, so I can see how that would be a little bit of a punch.
So does the rest of the realm not know how Brandon and Old Father Stark died? Actually,
Old
we
Father
find out the true story from Jaime and I don't know, Storm of Swords or something.
Yeah, I mean
the bathtub with Brienne, right?
Right.
Yeah, they like.
I thought you were saying that's how they died.
Oh, the water was a little too hot.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know.
I wonder if they even know how it really went down. Like they say that he was strangled while his father watched, but they didn't. Do they know that his father burned to death while he was being strangled? Like it was connected. Like Jaime said it. Like he was one of the few people that know about it, but right here they're not going. Why would they go into the details? Who wants to dwell on that? But
it's also, I feel like it's another thing that could be laid at the door of it being an early chapter, an early book. Like it might not have been completely coalesced in George's head.
Right.
Yeah.
What you mean? He doesn't plan everything out meticulously?
No, broad strokes. Bina, broad strokes. I did like the bit where they were laughing in the crypts, and I was thinking, this is the first time anyone's ever laughed in the crypts, and I thought the spirits of the old Northern Kings would have appreciated that, or would have most likely looked down their long noses at them and that's it. Take that outside. But it was nice that someone was laughing in the crypts.
When you say they were laughing, I don't think Ned was laughing ever.
Well, Ned makes a couple of jokes.
Yeah, Ned did joke.
It's kind of funny to hear Ned try and make jokes.
Well, the pleasure of my company, surely, Robert.
They've heard laughing before. They've heard laughing before because when Jon and Robb tried to pull that trick on Arya and Brand, and she punched Jon, and they laughed about it. And she's like, "You scared the baby." Nothing. Nobody remembers that.
I do.
Yeah,
I remember
covered
when
him in flour or something.
Line of...
Yeah, he's covered in flour and pretending to be a ghoul.
Right in the middle of the chapter when Ned brings Robert downstairs into the crypt, there's this passage that I find very creepy. Ned stopped at last and lifted the oil lantern. The crypt continued on into darkness ahead of them, but beyond this point the tombs were empty and unsealed, black holes waiting for their dead, waiting for him and his children. Ned did not like to think on that.
There's a lot of foreboding in these early chapters that you don't appreciate until you've read the books and on a reread.
I guess the idea that iron holds the dead in place is kind of interesting here.
Mm-hmm. Do you think it's significant?
I do.
Yeah.
Well, it made my recap, so it must be.
Humble, Brett. Very humble. I forget how humble you are.
He's riding high on his Lunar Dragon love, so he's untouchable. How many of you, show of hands, which works obviously brilliantly well on a Skype podcast, think that Winterfell harbours some kind of magics underneath, or potentially a dragon that's going to be unleashed in the coming craziness.
There's magic, but no dragon. That's my...
So the hot steam, the hot waters aren't...
Hot springs are just hot springs.
Yeah, but there's definitely something down in the crypt.
Yes.
Yeah. It's a place of significance, definitely.
FTWard laid on us. What's the theory?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, there's lots of theories, but I think there's 100% magic. Brandon the Builder put something in there somewhere along the line. Whether it's a dragon or not, I have a hard time believing it is, but I kind of like the thought.
Deceased, revivified zombie Stark vengeance-seeking.
Yeah, there's a landmine for the others buried down there. When they get down there, something's going to cause trouble for them.
I always liked the idea that Winterfell was built on the place where the last hero defeated the others the first time with the Children of the Forest. Because Winter fell.
Ah, seriously? I feel so dumb now. That's like the first... Oh my god.
Well, you see, a piece of the moon landed there, and that the rock in there.
Don't push your luck, Brett.
The others can't walk on it because of the rock.
Breathing out.
Yeah. Once again, when Brett is proven right, we're all gonna look dumb. Oh, on that.
There are deformed dragons hiding somewhere under there.
No, that's not part of the
breath
theory.
is causing the water to heat up.
Oh, that's not part of the theory. That's when it became outlandish.
That's just stupid, Nadia.
Cause magic. Okay. On to Jon I. I think that's #Reg.
It is. Okay. Jon I. The chapter opens several hours into the Stark's welcoming feast for King Robert Baratheon and his royal party. Jon is sitting in the back with the squires and dogs and is getting a little tipsy. Mance Rayder is watching all of this, though we don't find out what he is until several thousand pages later. Jon watches all the high lords and ladies come into the hall, and he judges them all, including calling Myrcella insipid and stupid just because she smiles at Robb. Jon sees through Cersei's smile as well. Ghost fights off a bigger dog that wanted his honeyed chicken. Benjen slums it for a bit by visiting Jon and talking about how awesome the Night's Watch is. Jon wants to join up, but Benjen tells him to get laid first. Jon compares himself to Daeron the young dragon when told he is too young to join, but Benjen counters that Daeron died when he was 18 also. Jon pouts and stumbles away drunkenly. He goes out into the courtyard where Tyrion Lannister tumbles out of the sky because, that happened. Tyrion imparts some useful bits of wisdom to Jon, including the memorable line, "Never forget what you are, for surely the world will not. Make it your strength. Then it can never be your weakness. Armor yourself in it, and it will never be used to hurt you." Tyrion tells Jon that he has more of the North in him than his brothers. Tyrion and Jon become friends, and Ghost suffers Tyrion to pet him. The chapter ends with one of my favorite last lines of any chapters. When he opened the door, the light from within threw his shadow clear across the yard, and for just a moment, Tyrion Lannister's toots stood tall as a king. Discuss.
How old is Jon when he dies at the end?
He's
16. Dance with Dragons.
16, 17.
He's 16. Okay.
Yeah, it hasn't quite been 3 years, right? It's been like 2 years and something months.
Well, no, it's because it's.
I was just looking at the timeline. It's actually 3 years and 4 months. Well, sorry, that's from Dany. So, it could be a little bit less.
So he's not quite 18.
Just the fact that he's making fun of an 8-year-old for smiling is a little bit. She's marching with like the handsome guy that she's probably in love with now, and she's like, "Oh, how dreamy he is! You stupid!" Like it just seems.
Yeah, just the idea that a 14-year-old thinks an 8-year-old is stupid. It's kind of like, well, of course you do.
Exactly.
Most 14-year-olds think everybody's stupid.
Yeah, exactly. Especially 8-year-olds.
Anyone notice the description of Tyrion's hair and then Tommen's? They both have white gold hair. So a lot of people use that as basis for the Tyrion is a Targaryen theory. But if Tommen has the same hair,
hair so blonde it seemed white.
That means it runs on the Lannister side as well, right?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Because they can't both be Targaryen descendants. It's either Tommen or Tyrion.
Actually,
that would just be crazy.
What? All
well,
of the children
if Cersei is part Targaryen.
That's not possible.
Everybody's a secret Targ.
No one's a secret Targ.
And that's
there is no House Lannister. They're all Targaryen.
Actually,
Tywin's the end.
When it comes to descriptions, the one I really like is of Benjen, where it says his uncle was sharp-featured and gaunt as a mountain crag, but there was always a hint of laughter in his blue-grey eyes. It's sort of just nice to know that Starks can be mirthful.
I was just gonna say something completely different than that, so go ahead.
And now for something completely different.
Well, there's a lot of talk of smoke and tears in this chapter, and I know it's stupid, but the whole like salt and smoke. This is Jon's first chapter. Prince that was promised bullshit. If you're gonna use it at the end to say that like Jon's rebirth and smoke and tears as salt is like the prince that was promised thing, you see it right here in the first chapter. There's a lot of talk of how smoky it is, and Jon cries because he's a baby.
You're all sympathy, aren't you?
I get drunk and cry.
He's a drunk 14-year-old with daddy issues.
Yeah. The other thing that struck me is we've just had Kat saying that we haven't seen direwolves for thousands of years, and then Benjen's just like, yeah, there are direwolves beyond the wall.
All over the place.
We see that shit on the regular, yeah. So...
I don't
But he
believe
didn't say
him.
they see them. They
Yeah,
just
he
say
hears
we hear
them.
them.
Yeah, but he's evidently completely unfazed.
You think Bingen was just trying to make Jon feel not cool for having a direwolf pirate?
Yeah,
Just
whatever.
like-
I have...
like-
whatever. I've seen so many direwolves. I've got 3 pet direwolves.
I think the line was there have been no direwolves seen south of the wall for hundreds of years.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
that's not possible, right? I mean, there has to be a breeding population in the woods somewhere, in the wolf wood or something. It's not like the direwolf climbed over the wall, right?
Blood
I mean, we don't know where.
And maybe there was just
I mean, do you think that that direwolf is completely natural, Thomas?
I do, yeah.
Oh, really? Completely?
He came from the North Grove.
The utter disdain.
Tough on his ship there and then placed south of the wall.
In parenthesis, you may think that, but you'd be wrong. Close brackets.
I mean,
Can
I
you
have a hard
establish-
time believing with the symbolism of the stag and like the puppies all matching the
Well, that-
kid.
So you think that was Bloodraven, Mordion?
I don't know. No, I'm not saying it was Bloodraven, but I don't know. I don't think it was completely natural. I mean, maybe it was. No, again, like I don't think it was Bloodraven. I think that's. I don't think he has that kind of fine control to
Yeah.
choose the sexes of a bunch of different puppies.
Pups, yeah.
He does.
I thought we established that Cold Hands carried the pregnant direwolf on
Can't
his
come
elk
through the wall.
over the. Yeah, you're right.
He can hurl it. He hurled it.
He
over.
hurled it. He hurled it.
Maybe those puppies weren't even from that direwolf. They harvested puppies from a bunch
Oh, that's so horrible.
and sewed them up inside.
I can just feel Amber Rock's heart breaking at the talk of harvesting puppies.
On another note, did you guys notice that in multiple of these chapters, everybody is calling Bingen just Ben? And I was thinking, like, nobody in the fandom ever just calls him Ben, but in the books, like Ned and Jon, it was like, "Hey Ben, what's up?"
That's because Benjen's cool.
Like, Bingen is cool.
Yeah.
It's a fake
Uncle
made-up
Ben
name.
is
Yeah.
funny.
Uncle
weird,
Ben
we
just
shortened-
sounds too. It just sounds too.
Uncle Ben
Star
makes
Wars.
rice, doesn't he?
Yeah, exactly.
Why don't we ever call him Eddard then?
True.
Because Ned is cooler than Eddard.
Is it?
Yeah.
That is. Yeah.
Yeah.
that's
It's a lot easier for
And that is
minstrels
bad.
to rhyme it.
Jesus.
One other thing that I picked up on was the fact that Jon has, like, if not worship, but he's comparing himself favorably to past Targaryens, which you would think as a Stark that he'd be like all about the crazy, awesome Starks in history. But the first person he compares himself to is Darren the Dragon.
Yeah,
Of course,
good
he's
point.
corrected by Benjen, but still, he's more, since he's a Targaryen, it makes sense. But
Who dies young just like him?
Yeah, I think it appeals to young boys. Kind of a boy king.
Whoa!
Warrior king.
Brett.
Sorry.
Calm down.
It wasn't even. He didn't even
over the
say
line.
young boys appeal to him. He said it appeals to young boys. There was
is even
nothing
weirder.
objectionable about that.
I think that reaction says more about you, White Raven, than anything else.
He is a young boy, right?
Yeah, he's a 14-year-old kid.
I tell you that the line that really stuck out at me in this chapter is, like, the first time you read it, and when Tyrion says, "Do tell my lord father, my mother died birthing me, and he's never been sure about his parentage. Like, you are your mother's true-born son of Lannister." And the first time you read it, or the first time I read it, it was just like, oh yeah, his father hates him because he's a dwarf. But like the whole, my father's never been sure about paternity. I guess that becomes more significant with rereads.
I never thought he was serious about that though, because I mean, Tywin to admit that—that's a big no-no.
But maybe because Tyrion's smart, maybe he's just sort of picked it up.
Yeah, I think that could be one of those things that George was maybe hinting at early, and then decided he was being too obvious and needed to walk it back. Or something.
I'm having a wicked deja vu. Do you think Tywin would have, if he had known that Tyrion wasn't really his son, do you think he would have like cast him off, or do you think he would have been like, no, the Lannisters can't take that kind of spurning, and we'll just say he's mine because I don't want to have the disrespect of someone betting my wife?
I think he would have drowned him in a well and said that he died.
Not told anybody about him.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I can see Tywin, especially because he's not the eldest, thinking, well, he's not going to inherit, so he doesn't really matter. But it's just going to be way too embarrassing to admit that I've been cuckolded, so let's just let him carry on. I think it's quite plausible that Tyrion's smart enough, not maybe to like really know that the nitty-gritty or have a fully formed plan of what really happened with his mum, but to think that this is getting so pathological with my father that it can't just be because I'm a dwarf, there has to be more to this.
Yeah, I think there's an undercurrent to their relationship of that. That is maybe never spoken, but they're both kind of aware of it on some level.
Okie dokie. Anything more on Jon I?
Well, I think that last line for me, I think
that could be pretty big foreshadowing. Or
I think Tyrion will be the king.
Really?
Yeah.
He'll be the one to marry Daenerys?
I think Daenerys dies.
Do you think Tyrion is a Targ?
Then how does Tyrion become king?
No, he means King of Meereen. That's what he means.
No, I mean King of Westeros. Yeah.
Does he have a dragon at the end?
Yeah, I think they come across, and he's the conquering. He's the last living Targaryen, and Sansa is his queen, and that's how the story ends.
I don't want him to be a Targaryen.
Well, I don't either, but it's not up to me.
Please feel free to write a letter of complaint to George R.R. Martin. That would be cool, as long as Sansa's kind of on the throne.
I want Sansa to be queen.
Yeah, I like the idea that him and Sansa are still married, and that's why she becomes queen.
And I think Sandor will be Lord Commander, and he'll be kind of Lancelot to her Guinevere.
Nice.
That would be so cool.
So who's
Theory
Galahad
of the week.
In all this? Who's he got to fight off? And
Stannis?
Brother.
Yeah. No, I just want Stannis away from Sansa. Damn it, I'm calling her Sansa now. All right, let's move on.
I have something weird to bring up before we move on.
Please do.
Okay, so I've been thinking about this, and I wrote it in the doc. Cuckolding is usually putting horns on someone, and they're Baratheons, and Robert is known for cuckolding and having affairs a lot. Do you think George made the Baratheons have the stag because of that?
That would be very cool. That's
I think
nice.
he made the Baratheons the stag because the direwolf with the antlers. Wasn't that like his first image of the story or whatever?
Oh yeah, you're right. That makes sense too.
I think I stole that from somebody else. I think someone else.
But it's still elegant though. I still really like the idea. So on to Catelyn II. Who's covering Catelyn?
Oh, I got one more thing on Jon's chapter. George loves talking about Joffrey's lips.
Yeah, he does.
Are they all soft and pillowy?
He just writes about them all the time.
That's creepy.
I mean, he writes about Ramsay's lips too. I feel like when it's like an evil character, he's just like...
Does he write about Roos's lips or just his eyes?
Cat 2, Amanda, drag us back into sanity.
All right.
Please, let's get to the aching loins. That's what we've all been waiting for.
Yeah.
I know. Oh, the aching loins. All right. So, Catelyn 2 begins with...
That's what happens when you have a 9-inch meat pie.
Alright. So, Catelyn 2 begins with Eddard and Catelyn sharing a moment of intimacy while we learn about hot springs and Catelyn's desire for another child. George is pretty incapable of describing sex in an appealing way, so I appreciate his restraint here. They discuss Robert's...
Wait. It begins with, out of all the rooms in Winterfell's Great Keep, Catelyn's bedchamber was the hottest. She seldom had to light a fire. That's why they have so many kids right there.
Yep.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
No, you're not.
I'm not sorry.
Alright. So anyway, they describe Robert's offer of the handship and Sansa's betrothal to Joffrey, and Eddard decides to reject Robert, which troubles Catelyn, who cautions, "You knew the man, the king is a stranger to you." Eddard then expresses bitterness about Brandon being the one groomed for command and for Catelyn, which feels like an old argument. Maester Lewin then arrives and shares that a package arrived mysteriously with a lens in it. He ended up dismantling the box, and Catelyn finds Lysa's note and then burns it despite it being in Tully Pig Latin. The notes say that the Lannisters murdered Jon Arryn. After some discussion, Eddard decides to go south at Lewin and Catelyn's urging despite his own misgivings. Catelyn remembers trying to ID Jon's mother based on rumors that it was a Shara Dane and it being the only time that Eddard was harsh to her. They then decide that Bran, Sansa, and Arya will go south with Eddard, and Robb and Rickon will remain with Catelyn at Winterfell, and Jon Snow will be joining the Night's Watch.
She hates her daughters. She lets them go in a heartbeat, but not Bran, not my special boy.
She loves Bran to the exception of all her children.
Why is that? They never really give you a reason.
It's really distasteful. I don't know. To me, anyway.
I'm not surprised she has a favorite. I just don't understand why it's Bran.
Oh.
I mean, Robb's a strapping young man. Maybe because he hangs out with Jon Snow too much.
It is kind of odd that it's not the firstborn, because I mean, from the a lot of people hold the firstborn up higher than everyone else, but it seems like she's kind of willing to let Robb go a little more, but also he's staying, so he's not leaving.
Or the baby, even. It's weird.
Oh, Rickon's not going either.
Crazy.
She just likes her boys.
Get Rickon out of here.
Rickon's not crazy yet. He's just weird.
He's probably already showing signs. We just haven't seen.
No,
it.
he's such a sweet kid. He stops to visit with Jon on his way to the dais.
That was a cute scene. I mean, our memory from Jon.
Yeah.
Why do you guys think Ned doesn't tell her about Jon? Like, that's the one thing that makes me think that it's not R plus L equals J, because why wouldn't he tell her?
I think
he doesn't trust her.
Because it's treason.
He doesn't trust her?
Yeah.
They've been married for 20 years at this point.
It might have been part of the promise. That was the promise that not to tell anyone. That might have been the deathbed promise to his sister.
And it's also just one of those things.
I think it's because Ned thinks he's committing treason against Robert, and he doesn't want to include anyone else in that.
Oh, maybe.
Oh, that's clever. Yeah.
Do any of you think Benjen knows about Jon? Because when Jon says something, "You're not my father," Benjen thinks
that more's the pity. Yeah.
I think he trusts Benjen and he doesn't trust Catelyn because she's too prideful. She won't keep it a secret. I don't think.
Maybe he trusts her now, but didn't then.
Yeah.
And now it's to the point where.
Yeah, it doesn't do any good to tell her, regardless, right?
Well, he has that line where he says, "He's my blood. That's all you need to know."
Yeah.
But if it was strictly his son, he would have said, "He's my son. That's all you need to know." Like it seems like he's not going all the way, where he should have just said, "He's my son. Of course I love him." He said, "He's my blood." So that was one of the first red flags for me.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you say that Catelyn is prideful?
Because I think she's more concerned about her not being cheated on than she is about Jon's life.
I mean, that's also like social, like, but you have to also keep in mind that, like, in their society, people don't keep their bastards around in general, and so this is like, she didn't want to marry. She wasn't supposed to marry him in the first place. She meets him once, gets knocked up, which is miraculous.
Well done, Ned.
Yeah, I know.
So did he just? He must have just.
She just happened to be ovulating.
Yeah. Well, she
Her
was
temperature
young,
was
so
up.
she's like more fertile, I guess. I don't know.
She is hot.
Yeah, she is.
Yeah.
Her bed chambers are the hottest.
Yeah.
But they probably did it at River Run. So.
Oh, they definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I tend to be a Catelyn apologist in general, so I don't know. But I can definitely see. I don't think her behavior towards Jon is okay at all. But
Yeah, she abuses him, I think, and that's not cool.
she doesn't abuse him. She's emotionally. She's unkind.
Abusive.
Like, she's unkind.
She's more than unkind later.
I agree that she's more than unkind later, but I don't think that's generally how she behaves. I think that's a special case. I don't think it's good. I think there's a difference between me saying, like, I agree with Catelyn and saying that I understand her to some extent.
I can empathise with her. I think it must be tough when your husband comes home with a kid that's not yours and no explanation and evidently favours him very highly, and I think it is. I mean, I don't think she's right, and I think sometimes I don't think she's. I mean, she's certainly not physically abusive, or probably even verbally abusive. But sometimes indifference, in contrast to motherly love, for other people can be far more cruel than that. And it is cruel, but I think it comes from a place of genuine lack of understanding and just hurt. I think she's really hurt.
Well, it was tough because, like she said, she gets to Winterfell and her, like, the Milk Mother and Jon had already taken up residence. Yeah. So she was like the second one there, kind of. So it's kind of like Robert saying out the wrong name the first night. Not quite the same, but it's kind of along the same lines. But Catelyn got.
But in a way, it's worse, isn't it? It's not even like he's saying another woman's name on the first night. He's already said that woman's name 9 months previously and come home with a baby. I mean,
right.
It's far worse. Ooh, Idris Elba is a warlord.
What?
I guess maybe that pays better than being an actor, depending on.
I think it's a bird.
I think it's a bird. Yeah.
It's Matt's
the birds. Yep.
Blood Raven.
Caitlin says that Maester Lewin delivered all her children, right? But Rob was delivered at River Run, we think?
Just another
Jane
more proof that
Westerling.
she's a liar.
So did she bring him, or she was
No,
just...
4 out of 5 is good enough. I mean,
because Maester Lewin comes from Winterfell, right? He's not native to Riverrun.
Well, I don't know, because...
Or did she have her baby in Riverrun and Maester Lewin was of the Tullys and then they both went up to Winterfell?
Because Ned's father had a different maester.
no, I don't.
Right. Barbary Dustin mentions that, right?
Yeah, and she hates him.
But I don't think it works that way. Meisters are assigned by the Citadel. It's
Good point.
Yeah.
you can't exactly request a certain Meister.
Maybe they were both there for a while.
Maybe Rob is Lysa's son.
Oh, fair. And that's why she favors Bran, not Rob.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Bran is her firstborn son. And that's why Rob had to die, because he wasn't really a Stark in the North.
So
Boom.
wait, Rob is Lysa and Littlefinger's son? What are you talking about?
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
And who's Tansy?
The midwife that delivered the baby.
That's kind of a bad name for a midwife, huh? Just in case it comes out fucked up.
Yeah, you wanted to glove up a couple of times just in case.
So no one's going to mention the Jesus line, or should I bring it up?
Oh, the Jesus line. Oh, yeah, to let this cup pass.
Yeah, because I never asked this cup to pass to me, and knowing what happens to Jesus after his fun time in the garden, I assume that it's not going to go well for Ned in King's Landing.
His fun time in the garden?
What happened?
So you knew that the first time you read this?
Yeah.
Well, that's like a paraphrase from the Book of Luke, almost word for word.
Right. But like when you read that, you were like, "Oh, this isn't going to go good for Ned."
Wait.
I didn't think anything was going to go well. Just there's all this foreshadowing of Ned had a bad feeling, and then this line, and I did not think things were going to go well. No.
Wait,
Did
what
you
I didn't
passage
get his
are you
head
talking
chopped
about?
off.
No,
Oh, okay.
Nadia, it's this thing in the Bible where Jesus is in the garden and he's praying and he's talking about like, "Hey Lord, let this cup pass from me," meaning like having to move on, get crucified, etc. But then he ends up accepting it, and so it's the same thing with Eddard here. It's also referenced in To Kill a Mockingbird with. It tends to get referenced a lot with someone making an impossible choice, knowing that they're going to be putting themselves in danger.
See, now you say like that, I feel even more retarded for not having picked it up.
Don't use the
Catholic
R word,
Catholic
man.
powers,
Well,
Bina.
I know, and
us
as a
papists
Catholic,
know
I
this
feel...
stuff.
I mean, I feel bad about lots of stuff as a Catholic all the time anyway,
Me
so...
too.
You know, just
Wait,
add
what?
this.
Us Catholics feel bad about stuff? What?
Nah, never.
I was told growing up that 9-inch meat pies were perfectly normal.
Oh, dear.
One thing I want to bring up is like I feel like the way that Peter constructs this whole thing with the box and everything is specifically to make it so that Catelyn he's manipulating her even with just like the construction of the box, because she's like, it's something for us to see to make her like feel smart and that she's like picked up on all this stuff, which is not to say Catelyn isn't smart. It's just that Peter knows Lysa and Catelyn's relationship so well that he's able to manipulate her incredibly easily with this.
Yeah, he's a master manipulator, and
Wonder if Catelyn translated it incorrectly.
She burns it like right away too.
Right?
Yeah. Just said sup.
Yeah. I was trying to come up with a crackpot theory earlier where Catelyn made up the whole message, but I think it's confirmed later. So
I have this awful feeling
weird.
that now when people come on this podcast, they're going to feel the need to sort of surpass White Raven.
I'm not sure that like dragons flooding from the moon. I don't know how that's going to be hard to do.
I feel like Maester Lewin. I feel like somebody must have like dropped that off and like winked at him or something. Because why would you even think about it that way? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like, oh, this is weird. Somebody left me a present. Oh, it's a Mirish lens. That's awesome. Or is it more?
Yeah.
Or did somebody want me to see more? It's
Yeah.
like, does he do that with
exactly.
everything someone drops off? Like, it's a raven and it flies.
What if
Can
he hadn't
Bran
dismantled
fly?
the box?
Like, the whole world isn't a cryptic crossword to be solved,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. If he hadn't dismantled the box, Eddard might have said no.
But I was honestly
It's all
surprised
Lewin's
when
fault.
Master Lewin
It is
started
all
talking
Lewin's
about the
fault.
box, because I just remember
This is
from
the
the show. I just remembered from the show that I think they said it was a raven that brought the message, and I was totally surprised when in the chapter he starts talking about a box.
It was left on his table while he napped.
Yeah, I always thought he was expecting it or something.
Yeah,
Like he had
I
ordered
did
a
not remember
lens
that.
from here or something.
Peter's taking a big risk, isn't he? Because if
Yeah.
Lewin doesn't take it seriously...
No, he's not. What happens? Okay, if he doesn't take it seriously, they never find it out. But if they do find it, they blame Lysa, and Littlefinger doesn't give a shit about her, so...
No one can translate it anyway. Cat's the only one who could translate it. It's just
I have a
gibberish.
hard time believing that shit.
Unless they've got like their
No,
Enigma
no.
codebreaker
I mean,
there,
he's taking a big
doing-
risk. What if Lewin doesn't realize it's a clue
Yeah.
and there's something in it?
Well, he
Yeah,
can
I'm
do
sure
it
he had
again.
Plan B's and C's and D's.
Just keep sending him more and more.
Yeah.
Lewin's like building telescopes. Like, I don't know why he's sending all these lenses.
By this point,
My
he's
Secret
like got,
Santa is awesome.
he's got like the Hubble telescope going in Winterfell.
Yeah, and he
Like,
can see
guys,
the dragons on
Everybody's
the
wearing
moon.
glasses whether they need them or not. Like,
Guys, you're not gonna believe this. There are dragons on the moon, Greg. I was just gonna say that.
I mean, maybe he figures if they don't get it, the assassin is also going to show up. But oh wait, that's
To kill
Joffrey.
Brand just for
That's
no reason.
Joffrey. That's not Peter. Never mind. Because there's no story.
yeah, exactly.
There's a lot of points in this story where, like, well, if this happened, that would have been nice, but there wouldn't have been a good story, you know?
Yeah.
What if Stannis just joined up with Renly? Oh, that would have been good, and the war would have been over in a month. Yay.
I don't know, I think their fight is it's kind of vicious. How
Yeah.
they're kind of hurting each other, really taking shots at each other there.
Yeah,
The
they're
Jon
not pulling
thing?
punches.
It feels
Well-
like an old fight, though. It feels
Yeah.
like they've fought about Jon maybe their whole marriage.
And that's worse, isn't it? These really old, sustained marital
Which is-
fights. Which somehow
Which is why I'm just like, tell him already. Just if it's really not your kid, just tell her.
Yeah.
She's not gonna tell anybody because it is treason.
Because she also has to worry about the whole inheritance aspect, and she has that sigh of relief where she's like, oh, we can just send Jon to the wall. He's not going to bear any kids that could ever, grandchildren could ever come and contest, Rob's trueborn heirs. So she's got that to worry about, too. So she's always looking far ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
she's
I
looking
don't think
back to-
Catelyn would have told. I think it's just he wanted to protect her because it was a new marriage. And then once you lie to someone about something or hold something back, you can't, like, the longer... It's been, like, 14 years.
It's easier
Yeah.
just to play the lie rather than break
You think
open
she
the
found,
whole
like,
wounds.
She found Ned's will, and then it's like, I leave ice to Jon Snow. She's like, no, this has happened before. He's
But I
gonna
think
take
it's
over
just,
Winterfell.
The first thing that we hear of her in this book is that when she's had sex with her husband, she really kind of is hopeful that she'll get pregnant again. Like, she defines herself by her ability in a classic aristo marriage to give her husband legitimate heirs and so make his region stable and its succession. So the very existence of Jon Snow, it just undermines, it goes to the very core of everything that she thinks of as her position and her duty.
Yeah, and considering the fact that she functioned basically, if I remember correctly, as the steward at River Run for a while there too, it's not like she isn't, like, intelligent and doesn't know history.
Other than them, only like the phrase that the only family we really hear about that have this many children. Freys have way more, but like most of the royal families have like
The
3 or
Lannisters
4.
have.
The Tyrells have
Three?
like 5.
Lannisters
There's, like,
have large families, I think.
Tyrells have 4.
4, but that's still a lot.
But they have 5.
Considering,
And she's
you know,
trying to make
one
more.
of them
I mean, the
Balin had
Lannisters.
power, right?
Yeah, Tywin would have had more probably if his wife hadn't died.
But
Yeah.
she did die.
Next chapter. Okay, so on to our final chapter for today, which is Arya I by Matt Varley.
So, going further down in the gender roles of Westeros, we meet Arya for the first time. They are all sewing, which Arya's not good at, and Sansa is, and Sansa's good at everything. And Arya really seems to like internalize this like idea that Sansa's better and she just sucks, because she even says like, I had to sit next to the little fat one naturally. So she pieces out because she's had it. She has a little flip out, and then goes and meets Jon, watches the guys play in the yard, and then her mother and stepdaughter Mordion are in her room. So what we learn is that Joffrey truly is a little shit. That the Hound killed his first men when he was 12. Joffrey shrugs and says, see me when you're older, Stark, if you're not too old. I don't know if that was foreshadowing his eventual death. And I think that's it.
Yeah, it's a relatively short chapter, isn't it? Which probably suits a 9-year-old girl.
Yeah.
Does anybody else think Jon was like kind of not predicting the future, but
Oh,
I don't
yes,
know,
we have
sometimes-
that line.
sometimes when Jon says stuff, it's like, man, Jon really has some foresight, because he says, when spring comes, they will find you and your body with needle locked tight between your fingers.
Yep.
Yeah, and then he has the same dream later, doesn't he?
See, I
With,
was
like,
confused.
finding her
I
in
thought
the
it was
snow.
a dream, and then I realized it was just him actually saying it to her.
Yeah, I thought there was a dream
Yeah,
of
but
him
I think he
finding her in the
actually has
snow
that
with a
dream
rose.
later.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, if it's mentioned twice, then it's got to be true.
Right. Well, it's kind of like you get back to his first
Yeah.
chapter, and he says something about him, like whatever it was, the Targaryen that left, and then he kind of follows the same path as far as dying young. I think I'm going to read Jon a little closer from now on, just to see if he has any more of these that I can force into being truth.
Also, seeing Arya cry over uneven stitches, like, makes you
Yeah.
really realize how far she's come, where she doesn't even, like, blink stabbing people anymore. She's like, me stitches is crooked, you know, and then she cries like a baby.
Yeah.
Do you want to do
Why
that
was she
again
a
for English people,
leprechaun?
please?
Sorry, I know she wouldn't be that cockney. It'd be more like, my stitches is crooked. I don't know. Whatever.
I like that it feels like a teenage novel at the end. It's like, it was worse than Jon thought. It wasn't Septa Mordain waiting in her room. It was Septa Mordain and her mother. Oh no. Womp womp. Poor Arya.
Also, Arya has the hands of a blacksmith.
Yeah.
Is she going to get together with
Again.
Gendry again and start blacksmithing?
Gentry.
Is there significance to the
It's-
fact that that
He's
Nymeria...
the only blacksmith we know.
No,
Well,
he's not.
You know,
No,
what's
he's
his
not.
name?
There's
Like,
Donald
Toho
Noy.
Mott or what? Yeah,
From
Donald
Nick.
Noy and
Nick.
Toho
And-
Mott or whatever that guy's name is that makes
Yeah.
the swords.
Hobo.
But Gendry's the only important one.
What do you
He's
mean?
the only
Mick
cute
makes
one.
needle.
yeah, Donald
In regards
Noyle is pretty
In
important.
regards to Arya.
In the books, he was important.
Yeah.
Well, that TV show here, Thomas.
Yeah. So what was you saying about Nymeria, Nadia? Or Bina? I don't know who was saying it. Someone was.
It was me now. I've lost my place in the book. Just 1 second. Like where they say that Arya had named her puppy after the warrior queen of the Rhoyne, who had led her people across the narrow sea. That had been a great scandal too. Do you think there's any foreshadowing in that? Do you think Arya's going to do any leading of peoples across the narrow sea? And
I
then
think
No,
she's
'cause
definitely coming back.
Jon didn't say it.
Nymeria nipped eagerly at her hand.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that occurred to me with that line was that it could be foreshadowing just a conflict against, Targaryens by way of them being, Valyrian or whatever.
What?
Didn't Nymeria, wasn't she fought the Valyrians, right? Or before she immigrated, right? Am I totally wrong? Am I super dumb? Okay.
Well, like
No,
her
I
people fought them, and then she like just got out of there, right?
Yeah. She knew that the war was unwinnable.
Prince, what's his name?
They had those water witches that set up like cyclones, right?
Water
Right,
mages.
Sure.
Something.
Witches.
Yeah, something that got brought up on another podcast that I was listening to. I was
Wait, there are other podcasts?
Yeah, there's so
Heresy.
many. Radio Westeros was talking about it. There's this whole thing about wedding Tully to Stark in your arms and a wolf with a fish in its mouth being Catelyn getting pulled out of the river by Nymeria, which feels like a stretch to me, but is applicable.
I also liked how Arya thought she was a bastard because she didn't have red hair.
So wait. Jon was the one who brought that up, so he kind of predicted it.
Yeah.
Jon is a fount of knowledge, I'm telling you.
He is. It's pretty impressive. Do you know
As
if
it goes on.
you rearrange the words in some of his sentences, he says crazy stuff. Like he says, baby Aegon and
Paul
all
is
kinds of
dead.
stuff. Yeah.
Do you know if you
We should
rearrange the
read
letters-
these backwards. That's what we should do.
If you rearrange the letters in his name, it's Nodge. Yeah.
Jesus.
We all know what that means.
That's true. Good point.
I don't know. Rob seems like kind of like a dick here. I think because
Yeah,
the
he's got
difference.
a bit of a temper.
Yeah, the difference between like a 14-year-old boy and a 12-year-old boy is pretty significant generally.
Yeah, but Joff's already taller than he is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I doubt he's through puberty, like not muscled like a young,
Yeah, I mean, like I could certainly see that being true, but I don't know. The fact that he's taller makes me think that.
I don't
he's
think
at least
Sandor
some-
would have had a problem with Rob at 12.
I also just wondered whether it was realistic. I mean, I know that Joffrey's just being sort of disdainful, but I mean, he's still a prince. Like, wouldn't these well-brought-up kids, brought up in a house where hierarchy and ranks treated with respect, have more respect for him? I don't
You're
know.
saying wouldn't Rob be more respectful of Joffrey?
Yeah.
I guess. I mean, maybe, but at the same time, like Rob's been like the highest-ranking child throughout his life, right?
Maybe
I
if
mean,
Joffrey
only
wasn't such a
because no one
snooty
knows.
shit.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, and also Joffrey's got like a whole bunch of crony Lannister guards being all like,
Yeah.
ha ha ha, every time he says anything.
Wasn't that hilarious? Yes, my lord. Yeah, those guys.
Yeah, I would think Robert expects his sons to kind of play rough too. I would think.
But none of them do.
Or except when they kill
Like-
kittens.
Well, I think Joffrey.
You think
I
he
mean,
plays
Joffrey-
rough? With girls and kittens, yeah.
Well, no, but he's he's
Tyrion
He's
him and
with
he's like,
Rob
no,
here.
don't hit me.
It's a full-grown man hitting a 12-year-old.
Full grown man, he's
he's
a
not-
imp.
Yeah, he's
He's still got
Joffrey's
like,
twice his height.
Yeah, he probably had to
Wait,
do a bunch of.
Okay, I was gonna say Robert is not 12 feet tall, but he was 12. Okay.
I don't know. Joffrey seems like a bitch when it comes right down to it, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
And Tom is just a sweetheart, so he doesn't want to fight anybody. Although he does want to joust
Yeah, he
pretty
wants
bad.
to fight. He wants to fight. I think.
Marcella is stupid, so.
She's not just stupid, she's
he's like
insipid and
6
stupid.
years old, guys.
Myrcella could well end up sitting on a throne.
She's awesome.
John said she
Very
was
long.
stupid. By White Raven's logic, I'm not able to come to any other conclusion.
Right. I mean, that's predicted. She's going to do something stupid.
It is known.
She lost an ear. That was pretty stupid.
Yeah, but by that logic, like, Luke Skywalker's an idiot because he lost a hand.
Why did John tell him
didn't
he's...
say.
Well,
This is like when we get out of like info dump land and start moving on with the story, I feel.
Yeah,
With a
the plot
6-page
starts
chapter.
moving after this.
yeah.
I
We'll
did
see.
like how Septa Mordion got her moment to shine. Like, this is all she's been living for, is like to be the to show how awesome she is at telling little girls how to stitch to the queen or to the.
Yeah.
This is my moment. Don't fuck it up, Arya.
But she
Too
must
bad
be
she got a stupid princess.
okay. Well, if there's no further comments on Arya 1, then I think that wraps it up for the main body of this podcast. So, next time on the linear reread, if we do, so this has been April 298. So if we do May 298 next time, it'll be Bran 2, Tyrion 1, Jon 2, and Cat 3. That's not quite in linear order. It's not hugely different, but it's a little bit different. So I don't know how FTWard feels about that.
Goodbye.
Mic dropped.
Can someone else do the theory of the week next week? 'Cause I'm getting tired of doing it. Just
Yeah.
with John.
Sweet.
You saying
Your
that
John-
burden is weary.
that everything John said is true?
Yeah, that was my theory
Sure
this
you
week.
were? Okay.
That was a little underwhelming after last week, I have to say.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, everybody. Thank you so much for participating, and yeah, speak to you soon, hopefully.
Thank you
Sounds
for
good.
hosting.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
I'll send you
Bye,
the
everybody.
recording now.